Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I would like to welcome you to the FortneyScott webinar entitled Trump Administration's AI Plan: What Employers Need to Know. This webinar will be recorded. Today's presenters are FortneyScott attorneys David Fortney, Elizabeth Bradley, and Sarah Mugman. I'll now turn the program over to David to start the webinar.
Sarah, thank you so much, and welcome everyone. We're so glad to be with you. And Liz and Sarah, hi there. We're virtually together, although I'm traveling a bit today, so as they say, phoning it in. But I am really pleased to be able to meet with all of you and take some time from yet another extraordinarily hot day in Washington to really unpack this very significant AI action plan that the administration has announced. And it covers a lot of ground, but obviously we want to hone in on the issues affecting employers. So Sarah, let's look quickly at some of our preliminary slides, please. Of course, I think most of you do know about us, but those that don't, we are a Washington, D.C. based firm. In our practice, we counsel and advise employers on the full range of matters governing workplace compliance. We deal with the agencies day in and day out all the time, including the Labor Department, the EEOC, the Labor Board, and we have significant experience and expertise in all of those areas, and particularly Liz and Sarah do today, which is why they'll be joining me to discuss these AI developments. Of course, our information is just that. It's general informational purposes. And although many of you are clients, today's discussion is non-privileged, and it is to provide you with just factual information, perhaps a little bit of opinion and views on what's developed, so that all of you are up to date on the latest, most significant developments involving the administration's AI plan. So let's just get right into it, okay, shall we? The agenda. This feels ambitious a little bit, but we'll get this covered. We'll get it covered. We want to kind of recap, because President Trump and the administration have been quite active in addressing AI. We're going to review for you and catalog very briefly, at least, a whole series of executive orders. We're going to talk a little bit, and I don't think this has received much attention, about some of the AI tools that DOJ is using, relying on AI to really power up the effort to evaluate deregulatory efforts that are a top priority for the administration. Then we're going to pivot right in and unpack the administration's AI, what's called the Artificial Intelligence or AI Action Plan. And then from that, we want to really then spend the back part of the webinar discussing what the impact is on employers, both with respect to non-discrimination obligations and, importantly, worker automation versus augmentation, because AI has both impacts on the workforce. So we want to drill into that a little bit. So with that, Sarah, let me ask, maybe you can kick us off. Let's start reviewing so people have some context on the current action plan and the background on it.
Of course. So for the first few months of the administration, Trump had issued executive orders that contained the foundational principles that underlie this AI action plan. On his third day in office, he actually had issued an executive order titled Removing Barriers to American Leadership in AI. And this is the executive order that required the development of the AI action plan that was ultimately issued last week on July 23rd. And that we'll be discussing in closer detail more shortly. So this executive order, however, also revoked Biden's AI-related executive order, which was titled Safe, Secure, and Trustworthy Development and Use of AI. So this early executive order from President Trump marks this administration's shift away from focusing on risk mitigation through regulation to kind of full throttle innovation efforts to achieve what they describe as global AI dominance. Then in April, President Trump issued 2 executive orders that were focused on educating American youth and skilled tradespeople about AI-related occupations. Notably, these executive orders called for increased participation in AI-registered apprenticeships, and it also tasked the Department of Labor, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Energy with developing a plan for reaching or surpassing 1 million new active apprentices. And this plan should be developed by August 21st. So these 2 executive orders really marked the administration's understanding that AI is going to radically change the labor market, and also acknowledges the administration's responsibility to help kind of develop some solutions for equipping a workforce with AI-related skills. Lastly, to touch on right now would be the same day that the AI action plan was issued or unveiled last week. Trump also issued 3 executive orders containing policies that really align with, the action plan itself. One of which I'll kind of touch upon a little bit later today. But in the meantime, Liz is going to share an example here of how Trump's administration is really practicing what it preaches and kind of implementing AI into its operations.
Yep. So on the next slide, we have this is the Doge AI deregulation decision tool. It's a mouthful, right? So this is the Trump administration embracing how AI can create efficiencies. It's looking at, this is the case for using AI, and they've plotted out the estimated man hours to review approximately 100,000 sections of regulations, and say it's 3.6 million man hours. And they say the use of AI will be able to save 93% of those man hours. That is a significant time save. It's developing the case for the benefit of the use of AI. What's really important here is I think this is sort of the perfect vignette of how AI is both automating and augmenting the workforce. So we're going to see what we're seeing here is absolutely, it's automating a significant amount of man hours. This is where the Trump administration, through the AI plan, and we're going to talk about this throughout, is acknowledging the impact that's going to be on the workplace. That's going to be a thread that both David and Sarah are going to talk on throughout, and the plan of the administration of how to address that impact and to develop the U.S. workforce. So the case for AI, it saves 93% of man hours. Moving to the next step, next slide, it's actually showing how the AI is going to augment, not completely replace human workers. So you'll see as this timeline steps out, in August, there is a step for agency policy and executive team to review the AI suggestions. Later on, I'm seeing AI is going to be writing the initial review version of the notice of proposed rulemaking. Then lawyers are going to get back in it to review those steps. So this is the partnership between AI automation and augmentation leading into where I think the future is going to be with AI. And through this, we do know that both HUD and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is currently using this tool to look at the regulations. We know the Department of Labor has stated that they are going to rescind approximately 60 regulations. So it's anticipated that DOL is going to start using this, and other agencies. So I think this is the future of where both the federal government is going and where they're expecting, private employers to be going. But with that, let me turn it back.
Liz, can I just make a comment on this before we leave these 2 slides?
Absolutely.
Because very interesting. So we're clear to everyone in the audience. The 2 slides that Liz has just discussed for us, these are slides that Doge presented to the White House, to the administration. This is their action plan, Doge's action plan on how they're going to utilize AI. It's instructive because, as Liz has indicated, the administration is kind of, if you will, putting its money where its mouth is. It's not just talking about AI, it's going to use it, number one. Number two, it also is quite instructive on the absolutely breathtaking scope of the deregulatory approval.
Mhm.
The Trump administration, and we've talked about this in a lot of prior webinars and podcasts, et cetera, about the attack on the regulatory state and what the administration's plans are. We've had some discussion about a 10 for 1. For every new regulation, there has to be at least 10 that were eliminated. And people wondering, oh, can you possibly achieve that amount of deregulation? They are looking at a 50% cut, and note the timeline. They are looking at doing this effectively in 6 months. I mean, this is stunning, both in substance, the use of the AI process. It shows the automation and augmentation to the human effort. And I think this is going to be, this is such an important part of how this administration is going to operate. I think it's very important for us to understand that.
And I'll just chime in there too. Sorry to linger on this.
Yeah.
I do think that the use of AI to do the initial review and to writing the notice of proposed rulemaking, yes, there's going to be government lawyers reviewing that and editing it. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a call to stakeholders out there. If there's a reg that's being revised or modified that impacts you, we need to be using that comment period, looking for logical inconsistencies or areas where AI is proposing the elimination or edits to something, and thinking about how it goes through and aligns with other laws so that it isn't creating a bit of a patchwork that doesn't align across multiple lines of laws. So I think the humans do need to stay involved and get involved in that notice and comment period.
Absolutely.
With that, David, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to move over to actually diving into the AI action plan that was issued just last week on July 23rd.
Sure. Let's go right into that. So, Sarah, basically the action plan consists, as summed up on the slide, of 3 different pillars. First pillar being to accelerate AI innovation. The second pillar being to build American AI infrastructure, and the third pillar to lead in international AI diplomacy and security. With respect to the workplace and the workforce, it's primarily pillars 1 and 2 that are the focal areas and that we're going to spend our time on. We want to call out, I just want to take a moment and offer a personal observation on this, if you will. I think that and there's a lot of mixed views on this administration, whether they do things well or don't. Sometimes whether they pop off without a thoughtful plan. Whether you agree or disagree with this plan, it is a thoughtful plan. It is I think the most strongest and coherent policy articulation we have heard from the Trump administration to date. It integrates multiple agencies. It articulates clear, cognizable goals. It recognizes areas of potential impact and weakness that need to be addressed. It charts from what the strong national interests are, which in a nutshell are, the U.S., the United States, we are largely the founders of artificial intelligence. It began with us. And the concept is, are we behind? Analogize it to the race to the moon from the 60s or some of the other major challenges. And that is literally, and I would encourage everyone, if you've not, this isn't a real dense document. It's about 15, 20 pages long. Flip through it, but it has some rhetoric in it, but it also really makes the point, overarching point. We're behind. We need to catch up. We have to move very quickly to catch up, and we need to maintain our lead globally. And there are certain attributes and trade-offs that will occur. It is a very different view than the prior administration had, extremely different. The prior administration had, as Sarah summed up for us, taken a view of AI being developed in a so-called safe space, if you will. Lots of guardrails, being very careful. And indeed, many of the AI developers, if you recall 12 months ago, they were before Congress saying, we need to be regulated because bad things can happen with AI if it's left unchecked. And that was a fairly broad view. Now, we effectively have done a 180 from that policy, and I think this will help contextualize some of these developments. We've done a 180, but the administration has, and that's a fundamental realignment. So it's very different than other major international areas. The EU has taken more of, I'll call it the Biden administration approach of with the risk pyramid and triaging and so forth. But the U.S. approach is going to be fundamentally different, and it is of critical importance that all of us understand the larger approach and how our workplace priorities fit into these three points. So shall we jump into them a little bit, because that's.
I think so.
Yeah.
So the first portion of pillar one that we want to talk about is, if we move to the next slide, is titled Removing Red Tape and Onerous Regulations. So this goes back to the prior slides. Under this one is really a focus on state regulations, and it says that the federal government should not allow AI-related federal funding to be directed towards states with burdensome AI regulations that waste these funds. Pretty direct statement there. There is a little carve out that says, but we don't want to interfere with states' rights, but there wants to be a heavy hand here with regard to state laws. Before we dig too much into state laws, there is, under this portion of Pillar 1, there is also a discussion of federal regulation. So the Office of Science and Technology has been tasked with reaching out to businesses and seeking information about what federal regulations are hinder AI innovation and adoption. Similarly, OMB has been tasked with looking at existing federal regs for the same purpose. So again, those are additional federal regulations we expect to be revised or removed as necessary. And the FTC has been tasked under this section of Pillar 1 at reviewing prior investigations that were commenced under prior administrations to ensure that those investigations are not based on theories of liability that hinder AI advancement, and to potentially modify or set aside any consent decrees or final orders they're currently enforcing, again, that would hinder AI. So while a lot of this section is focused on state regulations, which we're going to get to here in a moment, there is a piece of this, again, following on what DOJ is looking at as well, that is focusing on federal regulations and removing that red tape. But within the states, this is OMB and FCC have two main action items here for states. OMB has been directed to limit the funding that is issued to states with AI regimes that may hinder the effectiveness of the funding of the award. The way this is all read makes you believe that it would be AI-focused federal funding that may be restricted, but we're not sure exactly at the end of the day if it's going to be limited to that. We can envision that other types of federal funding given to states that have aggressive AI laws that run contrary to the federal policies may also be limited. Again, this is a wait and see. We're going to have to see how this rolls out, but I think that's what most people are sort of worried about with this provision. If we move on, I'm kind of
one other point, Liz, before we move off that. I just want to remind people for the big, beautiful bill, Triple B, that sucked up a lot of oxygen in Washington for the last couple of months, up until the final hours, had a provision that would have preempted all of these state laws, AI laws across the board. Congress, the majority in Congress, Republicans, would not go that far. So that was stripped from the bill, and it was not included. So within about a week later, here we have this provision. I do not know whether this provision will be sustainable if it's challenged in litigation, et cetera. And to Liz's point, we don't know how it's going to be implemented. But I view it as more the administration kind of planted a flag saying, look, you're on notice. You got something that restricts AI. If you enact that in your state, it may affect your federal funding in some fashion. And so I think this is something that I think is very, very important for us to watch and understand. I don't think there's going to be regulations to spell this out. I think we're going to have to learn as the programs are implemented how this plays out.
Yep, how programs are implemented, how funding is or isn't granted,
Right.
etc.
And
I mean, I think
resulting
so.
litigation and resulting litigation. Yeah.
Exactly. And so how is this going to impact the state anti-discrimination laws? So I think that's what we need to be thinking about as well. And I've heard some buzz on the about how the AI plan does not have any provisions that protect workers from discriminatory impact in AI. I don't think it needs to, right? Don't forget, we still have all the federal anti-discrimination laws. We have Title IX, we have ADA, we have the alphabet soup of those. So it doesn't need to provide protections to the extent that the federal anti-discrimination laws already protect workers there. There's a little bit of this, oh, but what you might be thinking, isn't there the executive order out there that says we're not going to enforce disparate impact theories anymore? Yes, that EO is out there. One thing that we are hearing, and again, hearing and seeing, is how is that executive order being interpreted? We are hearing that that executive order is only going to be enforced as far as not going to enforce disparate impact theories when it comes with regard to Title VII, that those are still viable claims that will be enforced by EEOC and federal agencies with regard to age and disability. So those protections are still out there. And again, don't forget state law, anti-discrimination laws have those protections as well. But states are continuing to roll out additional protections for employees. And we're seeing, and there's starting to be a patchwork of state laws. And I think where employers are concerned about the patchwork of laws in various topics. AI is just one of them. We have a little bit of a vignette. There's 3 different states we're going to cover here, but not trying to say this is the scope of all of the laws that are out here, but there's 3 that we kind of want to touch on about the range of possibilities that are going to be in these state laws. So of course we have California that is going to be effective October 1, 2025. And that law expressly states that AI tools may constitute a violation if they discriminate based on a protected characteristic. That is important. And it also encourages the use of anti-bias testing in developing AI tools. So that is going much further than what the Trump administration is recommending in its guidance and in these policies. And there's also some elements of this where in California, reasonable accommodations are going to be required for individuals, depending on whether it's their characteristics, its speech patterns. There's a lot of essentially trying to capture disabilities with individuals and trying to do additional reasonable accommodation obligations. In addition, it expressly states that these AI tools may be deemed an unlawful medical inquiry, depending on what they're asking for during the application phase. Another kind of subset of these state laws that I think are going to be challenged under the Trump administration is Colorado, an example of that. And Colorado's are going to be going into effect in February of 2026. What's very interesting with the Colorado one is that it requires disparate impact analyses. That is not, California doesn't require the analysis. It recommends a bias testing. Colorado requires those analyses. And then I believe it's required they be done on an annual basis. There's also a notice requirement to the individuals. Another interesting thing about the Colorado law, however, it does not provide an individual cause of action. So these are some more of these administrative requirements to do the analyses, to do the disclosures, but you're not giving an individual cause of action. Then we have Texas. Texas is fully aligned, and that is going to go into effect in January of 2026. It emphasizes that intent is required to be a part of liability if the AI tool has impact. So you have to show intent. That is getting away from the disparate impact theory. And it expressly states that disparate impact alone is not sufficient to establish an intent. So that's a really big piece, and that is trying to, I think that is getting in line with where putting some state guidelines around the development of AI that is in line with the Trump philosophy and theories. So we have a lot to be looking at here in how states are going to develop laws, or if they are, or if any of these are going to be pulled back depending on some of the funding challenges. But it's going to be an interesting landscape for us to monitor. The next part that I'm going to turn over to Sarah to talk about is protecting free speech and American values.
Of course. So ending DI has really been a recurring policy objective pretty much since Trump's first day in office. And the AI action plan is no exception. So also under Pillar 1, there is a section, of course, dedicated to protecting free speech and American values. And it calls for the removal of references to misinformation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and climate change in the National Institute of Standard and Technology's AI risk management framework. So NIST is an agency within the Department of Commerce, and it released the AI risk management framework in January of 2023, after 18 months of collaborating with private and public sector stakeholders. And the framework is really intended as guidance to be used by anyone who's designing, developing, using, or evaluating the trustworthiness of AI tools. To the extent that NIST's framework refers to DEI, it recommends that workplace DEI processes be prioritized in the mapping, measuring, and managing of AI risks. And it also recommends that DEI experts be involved in the designing of AI tools. So we anticipate that these two recommendations based off of the AI action plan will soon be eliminated. But the Trump administration, nonetheless, has expressed its commitment to ensuring trustworthiness of AI tools. Specifically, in one of the executive orders that were issued last week, along with the AI action plan, titled "Preventing Woke AI in the Federal Government," this executive order established two unbiased AI principles that should be incorporated into AI design and development. And the first of those principles is that AI should be truth-seeking, which is really meaning that it should be historically accurate, objective, and also acknowledge uncertainty when the information that it's relying upon is either incomplete or contradictory within itself. The second principle is going to be ideologically neutral. So this means that the tool should be nonpartisan and that it should be free from ideological dogmas, which the executive order lists as an example is DEI. So although this executive order is, of course, directed at the federal government's actions, they are certainly indicative of this administration's mindset, including its preference to erase DEI. The takeaway for employers here, however, is going to be to remain mindful when you are developing or using AI tools, particularly about what data you're feeding into it, because obviously the concern is that it could affect the outputs. And of course, the other recommendation for an employer would be to develop neutral policies for the development and use of AI within the workplace.
I just would, on this point, obviously the president has primary authority when he's directing the federal workforce. I mean, effectively, he is the CEO in a corporate setting. And so if in his company, which is the federal workforce, they don't want the words DEI or those initials to be used ever for any purpose, for et cetera, and it can be erased, sure. But as Sarah's overview indicates, these are not requirements. I want to make sure that our audience understands. These are not criteria that have been imposed on the private sector employers. That being said, I think because we're starting to see this pattern already, that the federal government's going to say, well, look, this is kind of the standard we're applying. We don't think we're in violation of any of the federal anti-discrimination laws, so why don't you align? And there will be encouragement. They may take somewhat that position in enforcing how they enforce the civil rights laws or other merger and acquisition requirements or other things that we're already seeing. This seems to be a growing pattern that we see, that the administration will take a very strict application to its own workforce and its own house, if you will. But it's a bit of a bellwether, I think, for the private employers out there. Not a requirement, but it's an indicator, if we can use one of our traditional words.
Absolutely. So, David, do you want to speak to us about
Sure.
the provisions that are empowering the American workers in the age of AI?
Let's just jump in the next slide, please. So this is the part where I think of this is one part of the action plan that I think is coherent and puts together a pretty comprehensive vision. And again, reasonable minds might have taken a different approach, but this is an articulation, I think, of a fairly comprehensive approach. As it notes, a worker first agenda. It's interesting, worker first. Yeah. So it's not ignoring the workers, not putting them to the side, but with a lot of attention being paid to the implication of the efforts, with a big role for the Labor Department.
I mean, David, I just want to chime in here as well. I mean, I think it's really important that the administration, AI is here. It's going to continue. It's going to continue to develop. And they're acknowledging that it is going to have an impact on the way human work is done and what is done and then how do we adjust for it? How do we assist the workers who may end up being automated or augmented, and how to help them move forward so that we as a workforce can advance with the AI technology. And I'm pretty impressed with the plan for the thoughtfulness on these steps.
Right. And so we've pulled out of the plan for you on this slide the specific action items. And the Labor Department is, of course, ground zero. That it's kind of the hub for the administration's implementation vis-a-vis the workforce. Prioritizing skills development is really reframing, keeping in mind that the Department of Education is largely being disassembled. So all the workforce training direction and initiatives are now, they traditionally have been somewhat labor DOL centric. They're going to be 100% labor centric, and they're going to be looking as a core component that enabling workers who haven't entered the workforce yet to understand AI, to use AI tools, etc. Developing the research hub. Again, very significant, and to understand the impact on labor and the labor market. Recognizing, obviously, there are going to be big changes on the workforce, the skills that are required, how work is performed, what work is performed, very fundamental. And many have compared this to the revolution, as fundamental, whether it was the introduction of the internet or the Industrial Revolution. But many believe that we are absolutely on the cusp of a complete reimagining of the worker and how work is performed. And the Labor Department is going to be key in both developing, training. I particularly appreciate the leaning into the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS. BLS is the go-to. They collect and analyze all the data. They are not, historically have not been, politicized. They're very reliable. Their data are very reliable and very detailed about all aspects of the workforce. And so we're going to have BLS now authorized to power up this new AI workforce research hub. Focusing on funding, because and notice rapid retraining. I think there are enough people involved in this. They remember NAFTA in the 90s and early part of this century. They remember that NAFTA had a gaping hole. It ignored, it assumed that the economy would pick up and retrain or provide new employment opportunities. And for millions of workers, that was not the case. And those areas of the country haven't recovered to this day from that. This represents, I think, we're not going to do it the same way this time. We're going to introduce fundamental changes, but we're going to do so with an eye towards preserving work, changing work, but preserving work opportunities and making sure the skills are there. And then, of course, the funds on what we now like to call upskilling, training workers, and mitigating the risk of future displacement. So this is not the model of just throw the worker out, put a machine in, or offshore it. No, we're talking about reimagining work, reimagining training, and reskilling our workforce. So I think it's a very exciting point. And I'll just add as a little teaser here, we've had a number of discussions with the senior Labor Department officials, and we're going to do a podcast hopefully next week once we get the schedules together with the Labor Department policy person who's implementing some of these new training programs, and see if we can really learn from him a little more of those details. But that's coming.
Yeah. One question for you, David. The last two bullets talking about federal funding that goes to rapid retraining of individuals impacted by AI and how funds can be used to proactively upskill. Do you think those federal funds will be impacted based on where, for employees in states that have aggressive AI anti-discrimination laws? Do you think these are some of the funds that may be subject to OMB limitations?
That part I feel very confident. Yes, I think they will. Number one, so those states will be winners and losers, or the states will back off, maybe, or sue. I think a second component is that the contractors who are involved in running the retraining programs, who are involved in being eligible to put their workers in, likely will be required to clear this no DEI requirement. This is viewed as another significant tool, even though they can't, by directly doing it, it's putting as a condition on this federal funding, this view of wiping out DEI comprehensively. So this is this pretty significant opportunity that most companies are going to want to participate in. And the administration recognizes, hey, we're not going to let that opportunity pass without also advancing our other goal, one of our other goals of eliminating DEI. So yeah, I think this program's this is like a 5-level chessboard is kind of how I see these training programs, with a lot of legal and policy issues in them.
So Sarah, do you want to talk to us about the training of skilled workforce?
Of course. So, beyond just educating and training the workforce about what AI skills should be developed, the AI action plan also addresses the need for skilled tradespeople to build, operate, and maintain the infrastructure that powers AI, things like data centers. So specifically, the AI action plan calls on the Department of Labor to either lead or partner with other agencies like Commerce or Energy to, one, work with employers and industry groups to identify which are the high priority occupations that are essential to building out this AI infrastructure. Then they should be working with state and local governments to create these industry-driven training programs aimed specifically for these high priority occupations, but also include input from employers to determine whether these training programs are effective. And the Department of Labor is also supposed to expand and simplify registered apprenticeships in high priority AI infrastructure occupations. I'll allow David, our proud Pennsylvanian here, to share a recent what we might call almost a case study in AI infrastructure development arising out of actually the Pittsburgh area.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, I think this is an exciting illustration. So Aliquippa Pennsylvania. And for those of you that don't know where that is, that's just north of Pittsburgh up the river. And but there was a huge steel plant in Aliquippa. And that steel plant has been dormant and abandoned now for decades. It is one of the products, really, as a result of NAFTA, of trade policies, and used to employ and drive a superb, very strong middle class in that area for thousands and thousands of folks. The thought is, as they start looking at this, we need more data farms, and we need much more energy to power the data farms that are going to drive AI. AI consumes massive amounts of data, computer capacity, and energy to make all of that happen, well beyond what the current grid can happen. So while we're talking about getting the workforce ready, we're also talking about creating the infrastructure to enable us. So the president, 2 weeks ago, went to visit the Aliquippa steel plant. It's been a long time since many officials have been to that site, but he went with Senator McCormick and others. And the thought is that the actual elements that you need to successfully build one of these new data farms and its own energy source is right there on the ruins of this steel plant. It has the ability to produce massive amounts of power. Ironically, the same things that led to building the steel plant there, the natural resources that provide the power, is exactly what is attractive for building a data farm and energy source there. It's got the river. There's massive amounts of natural gas available in that part of the country. There's ample room to build not only the electricity generation stations that will be required, but the data farm itself. And finally, in terms of the workforce, there are workers certainly who can build it and maintain it, and there will be those that can operate it. And in the greater Pittsburgh area, it's kind of a wonderful area in terms of many fine universities that have great expertise. So there's ample room for both college and non-college degreed workers, all of whom have the potential of having very significant jobs. So it's a nice microcosm of repurposing some of those older things, demonstrating how these programs, now look, everything looks good when you're at the blueprint stage. All the buildings are beautiful before you get them built. So we'll see how it works out. But I just thought that was interesting, kind of helps some of these programs kind of come to life a little bit, how they could operate, which is why I personally do find this to be very exciting.
Yeah. I think there's another piece of this that is a bit of a thread here. If you look at the jobs that are specifically referenced in the AI action plan, advanced HVAC technicians, electricians, other high-paying occupations. To David's point, the people who can build the plants are the focus here. That's also often traditionally unionized workers, right? And the unions are recognizing that AI is going to have a potentially significant negative impact on some of the core workers in some industries. Unions are already getting ahead of the AI. They're asking to have, in negotiations, many unions are asking for a provision in the CBA that says it is a mandatory subject of bargaining any implementation of AI in the workplace. Wow, that's a bold statement. So, depending on how it's, that if you're getting those requests, you need to look at it closely at the bargaining table. But so I think this is a little bit of the nod to the unions and this putting funds directly in and programs to train those skilled workers. And I think that is a very important part of this plan as well, and the administration's goals.
I agree, Liz, but it's both bargaining on the decision as well as the effects that
Correct.
employers would face. And notice this last bullet, this registered apprenticeship programs, traditionally that has been in the bullseye of organized labor, although they're not necessarily limited to that. There will be new programs that are also non-union, but traditionally, there have been fabulous, well-run apprenticeship programs that have largely been powered up through labor organizations as a source. So this could be not only for new employees, but to help reskill current employees. So yeah, I think there's a lot here, and it's going to be it's interesting, and there's not many industries that won't have opportunities here. That's one of the other things I like. This is very broad-based, very broad-based. Okay.
So moving on, we're going to talk. So HR, what is HR's role going to be going forward? And I'll lead off on this, and then let David and Sarah chime in. But I mean, HR needs to be part of that planning team. You need to be looking at your workforce and making determinations about how AI could be utilized within your employee base and how it could be increase operational efficiencies. Where is that, augmentation versus automation, and be planning ahead of how that's going to work for your employees and identifying who could be upskilled as the new term, not trained, upskilled. David?
Well, I think that part of this, and we're seeing this with a number of our clients, that that threshold step of, okay, what's the company going to be doing in 5 years, in 3 years,
Right.
something like that. Well, we're going to move into this area of work. We're going to start doing this work. Our supply chain has changed. I mean, all of this is interrelated. We talk about trade and tariffs and supply chains, changing environmental requirements and regulations. So this is a time where most organizations are sitting down and having meaningful business planning on how they go forward. We believe, and we have a number of clients where this is the case, that the human resource workforce talent managers, they need to be part of understanding and participating in developing the blueprint on going forward. Because then you're as an HR person, you're going to be able to really understand, okay, to do these new jobs, either new jobs or varied jobs or new locations, you need to think, what skills do we need to do? You're going to do an assessment of skills required. You're going to run that against the inventory of what you have. What is your current workforce? What skills do they have? What skills do they not have? Where are they located? Are they where we need them? Do we need to relocate them? Do we need to hire new ones? Do we have too many? So this goes into this concept of aligning a workforce, not just head count, but skill count, with an emphasis on trying to, if training is required, is training feasible? Can we get people trained quickly enough? What's in the marketplace if we don't train who we have? Gosh, no one. Oh, we better train. We better make sure we keep who we have. I mean, these are such fundamental HR workforce management issues that will come to this. And it isn't just us at FortneyScott that think that this is a key issue. I mean, this is one of the key components in the administration's plan, that the workforce is a core component, not only in executing, but in planning and developing how we implement it. Then finally, I don't think that any of the functions, I think legal functions, HR functions, they themselves should be subject to the same sort of fundamental questions. Can we automate what we do and do it more efficiently? Can we augment what we do and not have humans do it, but rely more on it? Think about what DOGE introduced and how it's going to go about revisiting and evaluating rulemaking. It's an example. I mean, lawyers used to do a lot of that, and other non-lawyers. That's both automation and augmentation using AI.
I was, for the HR example, I was in a meeting yesterday, and one person at the table was mentioning how they currently have a team of individuals who do offer letters, because it's based on the level of position, the state that the position is sitting in, is what the benefits are. And that is all being taken over by AI. AI can now, so that team of HR professionals who used to do those offer letters is now being automated. And then simply there is going to be, a human who does a final review of that. But that is a real-time example of exactly this. And I think we all need to be mindful. New York right now is the first one to have one, but again, I go back to my state laws. We got to be watching them.
Right.
But New York is the first one who have modified their WARN notice law to require notification if it's AI related workforce reductions. So these kinds of actions are happening, and states are starting to look at it, and everybody needs to be starting to.
Correct. So, I mean, this is a time HR to me, HR has a huge role in this, the well-counseled HR and the legal team supporting that. It's more than just not having disparities or adverse impact. Yes, that's important. Traditional employment discrimination laws, but there's so many other components in how these programs are designed and reimagined. And so I think that's a lot of responsibility, but it's also very exciting.
Yeah. So turning to last thoughts, and I will, since I'm speaking, I'll jump off with it.
Okay.
I think it's exciting times. Like I said, AI is here, and I think it is well thought out that we need to be acknowledging the impact it's going to have on our employees and on the workforce and on society as a whole, and be planning for it. How do we identify who's impacted, and how do we upskill them so that they can continue to be employable, and our workforce advances as technology advances. So I think we can be optimistic about the future of this. Sarah?
I would actually probably just echo, quite frankly, what David mentioned earlier, which is reading the plan itself, because quite frankly, it is also piggybacking off what Liz just said, is going to be the future. And it does bring you a sense of, invigoration. It gives you a little bit of motivation to get yourself familiar with AI tools themselves, because you realize that they will be a part of your everyday life. So the sooner you can start to integrate them, the better. And so that's kind of my final thoughts on that one.
I just want to highlight one of the parts of the plan notes, and I think that this is important, that there's an urgency, not just we want to do it quickly. There's a sense of overarching urgency. So we're going to see the administration pushing this, and the administration notes in that, as part of that, look, there may be some slippage. Things may not get done perfectly. There may be some mistakes made. And when you're moving quickly, that is what does happen at times. But the point being, okay, if that happens, call it, recognize it, correct it, keep moving. And I think to some degree, responsible planning, but you shouldn't be spending years planning this. You need to do responsible planning, begin implementation, constant cross-checking. There are lots of tools to check to see if your decisions are having adverse impact. So appropriate data collection and analytics, that can be done on a privileged basis. I do think that's a best practice. I would also remind people that years ago, we did the Technology Advisory Committee, the TAC, and we developed a report with 70 experts from all disciplines, plaintiffs, defendants, a lot of ex-government people, on how to validate different tools. So there are ways under the uniform guidelines and some of the other traditional tools to help us as we step into AI implementation. So those are the things that we're looking forward to, and we're looking forward to partnering with so many of our clients. I mean, it is very exciting. So with that, I just will turn it back over. Thank you both, Sarah and Liz. And I'll give a call out also. Keep in touch with our podcast, because we're going to be hitting on this in a couple of different ways on the podcast. So Sarah, to you.
Thank you, guys. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. This was a great webinar on AI. If you have any further questions, please email us at info@FortneyScott.com. A recording of the webinar and a copy of the PowerPoint will be available to all those who attended. It's going to be sent as soon as the webinar recording is available, and stay tuned for our next podcast and webinar.
Thank you.